Hello everyone, and Jim Gaming here, and today I'm coming at you live with a map review. This map is a map that I created. It took me months to build this. And I have a world download link, and I'll explain more of that at the end of the video, but this is a big land. If you haven't noticed already, it's Disneyland. But you might notice that there's something different about the entrance. Well, this isn't Disneyland 2015. This is Disneyland 1955. I love Disneyland, I love its history, and I've always wondered what it would be like if I could go back in time and walk in a 3D environment of Disneyland back then. So I built this place, and I am going to show you guys very quickly. So please notice that I might be talking a little fast at some point. If you feel like I'm talking too fast, you can feel free to pause, rewind, and all that. I'm trying to get a lot of it. So first thing we notice is this main entrance. Of course, Disneyland cost $17 million back then, so it was very cheap. Well, not really cheap. It was expensive as hell. But the entrance looks cheap, which is perfectly fine with me. You got these ticket booths out here. You got these spelled out Disneyland. Along with the banner up there that says Disneyland. You got Mickey Mouse over here, that's always been there. And over here we got these ticket booths. Now back then, all of the rides ran on tickets. So each ride was divided up into 4 denominations, your A, B, C, D, and your A, B, C, D tickets. But when 1950 anyway, later in the later 50s, maybe early 60s, they opened up the Matterhorn, the monorail, and the submarine ride all in one day, so they had to introduce the e-ticket. But shortly after that, they pitched out the idea, and there are no more tickets in Disneyland, and all the rides are free to ride on. So as we come up here, we enter Main Street, USA. We go back in time, the turn of the 19th century or 20th century. I'm blanking right now. Tend to do that a lot when I'm put on the spot. Anyway, not much has changed here, except this little building over here. I have been wondering what this was, because it's just been sitting here and I never knew. But back then, it was the Disneyland police station. But people were confusing it with the actual security, so when somebody had a complaint, they would come to this fake police station and tell them about their complaints, and they would be redirected to real security. They got sick of that, so they took out the idea of the police station. That little lockers was different. There's just this one building and a wall right there. That's different from today. And obviously the trees are younger. And you got your Main Street USA, which is pretty much not really different. Funny thing about this is one of my favorite shops. If you're into pin collecting, I got hooked. This is one of the main points. There are pins everywhere. All along this wall there are pins. Pins galore. So I spent a lot of time in this little shop. But back then, because right here, which I forgot to put in, let's do that real quick while I'm explaining. I'm just going to put wooden fence. There we go. There is a little Indian Native American statue out here. This used to be a tobacco shop. Of course, back then, tobacco wasn't known as a killer, so they sold tobacco in Disneyland. And the weather. It rains too much. Okay, we keep going, keep going. Then we come up to this little house. This little house is kind of funny. Obviously, it's nothing today, and the doorknob is gone on the front door. But back then, it was an intimate apparel shop. Now, if you don't really know what that means, I'm just gonna straight up say they sold women's underwear. Then, yeah, that's it. It was quickly replaced with nothing. Then we come up to the hub. This is where we enter our 4 lands. We're gonna start off with Tomorrowland, because that's the first land I built. And obviously I went this way. Up. There we go. Now back then, Tomorrowland took place in 1986. Now, today in Tomorrowland, it more depicts what we thought the future might have been, when back then, it was what the future is going to be. So we come up to these 2 massive buildings, and if you want to know what these are, this is Star Tours, there's the Star Trader, This is Buzz Lightyear's Astro Blasters. Back then, there were a bunch of museums. Hall of Chemistry, which is later in there. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea Museum. We got a museum all about aluminum. Because, you know, futuristic metals. And, get through the door. And there's nothing in there, but it would have been the Circle-Rama, Space Station X1, and a little art area where they showed off some art. And over here we come up to the star attraction of Tomorrowland, Rocket to the Moon. This unfortunately does not work because I cannot physically make it look like you lift up. I would need a serious plug-in, or actually I found a command using one command, which I can do that later. But you come on in here, you go through. Yeah, I kind of used the command that just tells you what to do. Come in here, launch pad. Now you would sit in these little seats right here, kind of like in Stitch's Great Escape at Disney World. There'd be a screen up here and a screen up here. The screen down here would show you what you are leaving behind, and up here would be showing you what you are going to. And that's basically that. But upon further research, the Tomorrowland was the least finished land out of all 4 of them, and this wasn't even open yet, so I have no worries about that. Over here we got the Space Cafe, which is your restaurant. Over here we have the famous Autopia. And obviously it looks a little bit different back then. It was the futuristic highways which we drive on today. But a funny little story about this, back then there were no guide rails. So those little annoying rails that if you're not a good driver and you're a parent and your kid has no idea what he's doing, he's bouncing off and off the track. None of that was there. You could run into the walls. The entire car was completely surrounded by a buffer, so no one would get hurt. And over here we probably have the least ridden ride of all Disneyland, the Phantom Boat Lagoon, which basically predates the motorboat cruise. In short, it would be almost exactly like the Autopia, but with boats. You could ride along here, but really nobody rode it. And this little section over here, which very shortly, within a year, all these flags went up into the main entrance, show the colors and flags of all of the states. Oh, we have all these little umbrellas. Because, you know, it was hot back then. And then we're gonna come up over here. Actually, we're gonna go over here. We got the Plaza Gardens. This little gazebo has a little funny story. Back when they were first building this place, the gazebo was originally going to be placed right where that flagpole is down in Town Square. But then Walt discovered that, oh my god, it's blocking the castle. We can't keep that there. We got to move it somewhere. So they just put it off to the side here. And then eventually it would be moved over to New Orleans. And now it sits in a retirement home somewhere in California. So do some research, you can go visit Disneyland history. But right here now is Fantasyland Fair. To be quite honest, I really like it there, especially at night. There's nobody around, just got people walking by. There's a little bench that I would always sit at. Nice way to get away from the crowd at night during the parades and fireworks and such. Now we enter Frontierland, one of my favorite lands. We got your little shooting range. We got your Davy Crockett Museum. All of these gift shops. Now over here is the stagecoach and wagons. You could ride along. You could ride in a station wagon, horse-drawn wagon, or a donkey in the innermost track. It's kind of hard to see. Get the time back here. But yeah, you can sort of see the path right here. There are paths, and it covered this entire area, which we now know today as being the place or the home of Big Thunder Mountain and Thunder Ranch, which I think it's roughly called. I don't know. Over here we have the Mark Twain Riverboat, which has been sailing since the opening day and is still sailing today. And we come over here to the Golden Horseshoe. I had a hell of a time trying to figure out this angle in here, but it all worked for the better. And we continue off to the New Orleans. It wasn't really that big. In a couple of years or so, I think in the early 60s, I don't know, I'm rough on my history here, they quickly started expanding it. Over here we got the Chicken Plantation, which I believe was a restaurant. I don't know, but so far it's just a stairway going up to the balcony and you get a nice, lovely view. And then we have the Frontierland Station. I had to redo this. Because originally all this track was level, so none of those little dips over there. And yeah, it was fun. No, it wasn't. And we quickly sprint over to our last... No, not last land. We're gonna cut over here to Adventureland, which this was it. This is Adventureland. Not most of it has changed. And we have the Jungle Cruise, which was a pain in the ass, I'm gonna tell you. All these little decorative trees, very specific, because you know back then it was all young, so I had to be very specific with the height of the trees, the foliage, and these little trees. You know, I can't hop, skim, grow a regular tree. It would end up being too big. Good example of what Disneyland was: two faces in one building. Only a person familiar with movie sets could really do this. And it was great. Now we come up to my favorite land, Fantasyland. I spent so much time here, you guys have no idea. Anyway, we come up in here, and this is all the same. The back is somewhat all the same, except this was open. There were no windows. I don't recall there being trees. Now we come over here, we kind of have that Walt Disney World style Fantasyland with the kind of carnival theme going on here. And we got Snow White, we got Peter Pan, we got Mr. Toad, and we got Mickey Mouse Club Theater, which showed previews of Sleeping Beauty, because you know that's what this castle was based on. We got the Chicken of the Sea, which was, I believe, was a restaurant. It was a giant ship in the middle of Fantasyland, which is kind of weird to look at. Got Casey Jr., Storybook Land, that's all still there. Of course, you got your lovely Matterhorn. Nah, Matterhorn wasn't built yet. But anyway, guys, that is Disneyland 1955 in a very quick look. And I will have a download in the description. I set up a download on Planet Minecraft, so if you guys feel free to check that out and download if you want to. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe for new, because you know I'm brand new at this. Early support is pretty good. I'm not expecting much since I am brand new, but yeah, you know, you gotta grow into it. It's a growing process. Well, anyway, guys, I will see you later.